the daily video and podcast series of Business of Cannabis. BFC Live highlights the companies, brands, people, and trends driving the global cannabis sector. Learn more at businessofcannabis.ca. Our BFC Live guest today is Shahbaaz Kara-Virani from Dutchie. We wanted to check in with him about their latest fundraise and what it means for cannabis retailers in the US and in Canada. Shahbaaz Kara-Virani, thanks for being here.
Hey Jay, thanks for having me, and beautiful hat, if I do say so myself.
You can say so yourself, and I only wear this hat when the company that it's representing raises $200 million in a week. How does that sound?
It sounds incredible. It sounds amazing. It sounds like we're living in a dream world. Can't believe it, but the time is now.
The time is now. So those that are watching, listening, I'm wearing a Dutchie hat, in case you're listening to the podcast, but Dutchie raised a ton of money this week. They made 2 acquisitions as part of that and have a whopping valuation based on that raise of 1.7 billion, which I think is a great story. It speaks to the tech of cannabis and cannabis technology and the future that lays ahead, which is great, and we can talk about that. But what I think I'd rather talk about is like what does that mean for retailers? But more than that, like what are we going to look like in the landscape of cannabis retail, in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Because that is super exciting.
Yeah, that's $1 billion question, if you will.
I think it's $1.7 billion, but yeah.
It's $1.7 billion, yeah. It's incredible. I mean, watching Ross and Zach Lipson, these amazing brothers, do what they're doing and building this company and getting the the whole world on board with something of this magnitude is amazing. And hearing Ross, he always talks about the fact that this raise, yes, absolutely, Dutchie raised and acquired 2 organizations, Leaf Logics and Green Bits, and are bringing them into the family. But this raise is a huge signal for the industry. It's a signal that the industry is here. You can't ignore it, and it's gonna be the biggest and largest industry this world has ever seen, which is crazy to think about because cannabis isn't legal in 99.999% of the world.
Well, yet. And I think that it's the yet that is in, you could put it in uppercase letters, lowercase letters, big font, little font. It doesn't matter. It's happening. Obviously, you come from the Canadian landscape. We've seen the Canadian landscape grow, contract, but in terms of like the market cap and all that. But what we have seen is that people want to buy cannabis at cannabis retailers, mostly private, and that has not changed and that has not diminished. That's only gone up. And I think we're in the ramp up, in Ontario, 1,000 more stores, and across the country another 1,000 more stores. And I think we're going to get to a place, I don't even know, a year, 2 years, 3 years now, where we're like at a steady state of the industry with all the products, all the brands, new retailers, like that steady state. But the US, except for some select markets, Colorado, California, and others, they're just not there yet. And actually, this is the point. Colorado just started delivery this year, the most mature market. And so I think the idea that retailers, even in places like Colorado, will be adding services to their customers really speaks to where of course, where Dutchie is exactly situated. And maybe it's been, it's obviously perfectly positioned for what comes next. But how do you sort of think about that as you represent Dutchie to potential retailers? Like, what are they thinking about and how are you positioning that?
For sure. So I think the biggest thing is, you look at province like Ontario, the Q3 report that just came out, the Q2 report, one of the quarterly reports.
Q3,
Q3 report
their
that just
finances,
came out.
But it's Q4 of the year. Yeah.
So $250 million sold. That equates to $1 billion industry in Ontario alone, which is astounding. They're staggering numbers. And obviously, COVID accelerated a lot of the cannabis industry. Cannabis was made essential, and it forced retailers to adapt and learn how to buy technology. And Dutchie, along with, all of our POS partners. We're kind of at the forefront of that. But now, you asked me earlier what's going to happen in a year, a couple of years, as cannabis becomes more and more normalized. And the other day, my parents called me and they're like, "Hey, we were just speaking about CBD," and I was like, "Okay, great, fantastic." But it's slowly penetrating the circles. But as the cannabis consumer comes into the industry, and again, 95% of cannabis consumers aren't in this industry yet. And as more and more demographics and segmentations of consumers come into this industry, it forces retailers to need to have technology partners that can think bigger, that can think faster, and are helping lead the market. The technology retail stack is getting so complex. And now in Colorado and a few of these different states, you complex loyalty programs. You have really unique segmentation. You have really a very intricate tech stack, and having kind of a core technology like a Dutchie at the forefront of that, where everything can connect into and you can run it from one centralized place, is really important. But it speaks to the complexity of where the industry is going, and people in roles like vendor selectors, and people who are responsible for buying these technologies have to get educated and have to learn how these technologies all function together, because you are forced to ride along and get better. Otherwise, risk staying stagnant. You really need to take advantage of technology. And so this industry is booming, but with more money in this industry means hyper accelerated growth, hyper accelerated knowledge and learning. So again, we're just getting started, but things are about to happen in this industry that's going to require us as a retail, as a brand, as a technology stack to get better consistently.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about a Business of Cannabis, but directly with you as well. The COVID accelerated things. You could say 10 years, right? Um, that's on like the tech side and sort of getting consumers used to taking advantage of like online delivery, all that stuff. But what it also did was the retailers who thought they were running just a brick and mortar shop and needed a POS, they really needed to learn up quick, or else they were going to be non-competitive for an entire year in their first year in business. And I think many of them did great. I think some of them still have a long way to go, but that learning curve was just so fast and so immediate. And I think that's actually where sort of your work, but also I don't even know the ease of integrating Dutchie into the overall retail tech stack, but people did it out of necessity, but also people did it because they found good partners to do it with.
Yeah, super well said, and exactly like you nailed it, Jay. COVID accelerated, and now all of a sudden, people who thought they were running brick and mortar had to learn about delivery. And then you look at the Ontario rules that you can't use a third-party delivery company; you have to use someone within the store. And so, kudos and shout out to all the retailers who adapted in it through that, and who also opened during the pandemic. They fought through. They had to learn how to drive behaviors online and facilitate delivery, and understand their consumer when they couldn't even really talk to their consumer, which is crazy to think in this landscape. But they're doing it. They survived, and they're getting better at it. Which begs the question, like how good are you at operating, kind of thing, and being an operator, because there's no playbook, and delivery can come on board one day and then be removed the other day. And it's like, how do you adapt, and how do you be flexible and nimble to the changing conditions? Because it's not easy to be a cannabis retailer in today's world right now, but it's amazing.
It's not, because you're dealing with so many externalities that you could be a great operator of brick and mortar and not have any idea what you're doing online. Or now you figured out the online part and now it's actually taken away, like you can't do delivery. And today's paper, the top of the fold was Toronto, in this case, might loosen up some restrictions. Directly below that was that Ontario might see 6,000 new cases a day starting next week. It's like, well, okay, well, I'm trying to operate a business. I'm in month 6. I don't like, I'm trying to get consumers, and I get it really does lend itself to just being nimble, being a good operator, working with great vendors and partners, because you just have to be that nimble. And maybe, not that there's a silver lining, but the nimbleness and the ability to change to dynamic circumstances, maybe that will prepare these retailers for what is next. And hopefully what is next is like, an omni-channel, being able to service customers where they are and then get them the products they want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what other industry is opening up 30 stores per week under such crazy circumstances and tight advertising rules and with a very uneducated consumer base and all selling the same thing? If you can make it in cannabis as a retailer today, I genuinely think you can make it anywhere in this world as a human being. Like what cannabis retailers are doing today is astounding, and it requires so many different skill sets. And again, just going back to Dutchie, I mean, that's really why we seek to do what we will do, is because we want to make it very easy for our retailers to leverage our technology, and have a pathway to online success and be better for our retailers so that we can keep innovating and driving forward features and different things, so that retailers can focus on really running their business, ensuring they have the right merchandise in store, ensuring they have the right staff training. I mean, we really want to be a partner, not just a technology vendor.
Yeah. I'm not going to say you got to raise the 200 million because I have this hat, but I have the hat and you raised 200 million. So like the two things, they might be related, just to keep that in mind. Shahbaaz, thank you as always for your time. Kudos to the company for the big raise, obviously, but I think even more for being able to service sort of this, huge group of retailers now and moving forward that are just, they absolutely need the service.
Jay, thanks so much for having me. And one more last comment: how do you get your beard so beautiful?
Well, it comes with having the barber closed for 3 months, fear of doing it myself, and some really unbelievable patience from my wife and kids to have a dad and a husband that looks like this.
You look amazing. Thanks for having me, Jay.
All
I
right, thanks,
appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Chat soon. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us on B of C Live today. We're able to do what we do thanks to our ongoing partners, including Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmarks, Can Delta, Headset, Gallagher, and Torque and Main.